Hey everybody, welcome back to the Honey and Absinthe After Hours podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Vincent.
I'm Janet, and this podcast is about all things art, business, and whatever we feel like.
And today we're going to talk about how to make money with your art. Now, things are getting kind of tough out there, and I really want to direct this podcast towards young artists, especially who want to help their parents out or who want to help themselves out through this rough time. So, one of the best things you could do is to keep busy and maybe expand that income.
Yeah, and we have been selling our art for the past 6 years. We went from having zero experience and a lot of failures, but a lot of successes too. And we taught ourselves a lot of these things, and we thought it would be really helpful to share our experiences because it's very different from just getting a job, like a full-time job with your art or freelance. Selling your art is something that you can control and you can do from the comfort of your own home in this time where we're not really allowed to go to conventions and make money that way. Yeah. So we would like to share some of the tips and tricks and how we go about turning our art on a piece of paper, our sketchbook, whatever, into an actual product, a print, a button, a apparel design, or whatever.
In those 6 years, we've tried, selling small things like buttons to merch, and also original commissions, which lots of people like to, commission us for.
Yeah, original art, similar to a collector buying a painting, or exactly the same as a collector buying a painting in a gallery, except we are the gallery.
Right.
We're cutting the middleman, essentially.
Right. And a lot of people, especially with commissions, want to see your own rendition of these things, which goes to your prints too. Like if you, do your own character, that's really cool too. But like sometimes people want to see their favorite character done in your style, which is really neat.
Yeah. So we've sold, like you said, buttons, prints, books, apparel, and digital products.
Yeah, and each has their own sort of pros and cons and, how people consume them. So, and we'll make sure to, share our insights.
Yeah, they're all different in how we choose to design for, and they serve a different purpose, which is why they have different price points.
So what do you do when you're a young artist and maybe you have an Instagram or a TikTok and you're making art and you're you're starting to see some successes. It's blowing up. You see some posts get viral or whatever it is. How do you know when the right time or what to sell when you haven't done it before? Yeah,
well, first I want to go into what not to do.
Okay.
So one of them is to relying too hard on fan art. One of the early mistakes that we learned is just because fandoms are popular doesn't mean people will buy your fan art of that fandom.
Right.
So like I made a Sailor Moon print, and people are going to buy that print not because it's Sailor Moon, but because of my style or whatever. And at the time, I was not very good at making prints yet. So
you barely graduated too.
Yeah.
So you didn't have experience selling your own original art. We learned how to make art for clients.
Yeah. In school, it's completely different from making art as a product.
Yeah. Appealing to a mass audience.
Yeah. And so that failed because not very many people wanted to buy my Sailor Moon print because my style wasn't developed yet and a lot of other reasons. So simply relying on a fandom to sell your artwork is just not going to work. Also, if you've been posting your work online and maybe someone has expressed interest in wanting to buy your work,
sure.
That's really validating. But just because one person said that they would buy your work as a print or whatever doesn't mean that it will sell. So that's what not to do. What you should do is you should try your best to sell as quickly and as fast as possible with the least amount of money. And because nowadays with social distancing and not being able to go outside and go to conventions to be able to sell your work in person, it's going to be really, really hard for you to learn the psychology of sales and why someone is buying your artwork or not buying your artwork. That is really important too. When someone kind of blows you off, they walk by your table and they're just not interested.
Yeah, in a previous podcast, we talked at length about how you shouldn't try selling online unless you have good experience doing it person to person. Well, since now that's not an option, if you're going to sell online and you want to at least make some money out of it, you got to pay really close attention to what you're selling, who's buying it, how much interest is happening or not happening. You have to pay close attention to what's going on.
So putting your work on social media is marketing. Right. It's not selling, not really. It's getting your work out there in front of eyes. But in order to sell, you need to put it on an online store. But that doesn't mean you need to build an online store from scratch. You can use things like Society6 and Redbubble, and those are basically called print-on-demand services sites. They will print your artwork on whatever product, a print, a blanket, a pillow, and
a purse, a mug.
Yeah. They've done all the manufacturing work for you, and they will ship it for you, and they'll handle all the customer service, everything for you, which means you get a very, very, very small percentage of the sales, which is why in an earlier podcast we didn't recommend doing that, because you're not learning as much as you should when you can easily, at that time, just sell in person. But now that you can't, that's your best option.
To start, at least. Yeah.
Compared to paying a lot upfront for your own website, domain, and everything, there's just a lot more costs involved to running an online store that you may not have the money for. And if you can just open even something like a threadless account, and start posting designs and work on there for people to buy, and just post everything, not post everything, make products of everything, and just see what sells, because that's essentially what you have to do. You have to kind of guess, and you have to analyze every piece that you do, why it's not selling.
For us to do a simple print, like we talked about, we've been doing this for 6 years at conventions. For us to sell a print and consistently, it took at least 3 or 4 conventions. Yeah. We've discovered really early on that people wanted to commission us to draw their favorite character, but selling a print and really getting the hang of that consistently, that was a really tough process.
It's really tough.
And, if you're starting out and you're not making any successes, well, just keep working at it.
Yeah.
And if something's not selling, just replace it with something new.
Yeah.
And if you have some sort of success at all, at least you get the chance to study why it was a success.
Yeah. You learn more from your failures than
Truly.
you learn from your successes.
Right.
You're getting to your first sale, especially your first online sale, is going to be really hard. Our first sale in person was kind of hard.
Yeah.
But it's an in-person sale. It's not that hard. To convince someone online to buy your work is 1,000 times harder.
Right.
So if you put, I've read articles about how to sell online a lot. And there was this one article, I think on Threadless, or I forget what it was. There was an artist who designed t-shirts on Threadless. And he had put hundreds of designs up, hundreds before he ever got a sale, and he had to do a lot more before he found a winning design, a design that made him thousands and thousands of dollars over time, because it resonated with people, or people related to that design, or whatever it was. But it took him hundreds and hundreds of designs before he got there, and for us, I recommend that you do the same thing. You just try over and over and over again. Just keep designing, keep creating, and you will find you will eventually find kind of a niche for yourself, or something that is unique to yourself that only you can design or is perfect for your artwork. Like I don't believe that just because someone isn't that talented yet, like they're at the beginning of their artistic journey, I don't believe that they're incapable of selling, because there is a product that is perfect for your art.
Yeah.
So if you draw really cute things or you design really cute things, prints might not be the right avenue for you, but buttons or enamel pins or smaller stationery type items might be. Or if you like environments, buttons are not for environments.
No.
So there's the product for everyone, and you just kind of need to try and test and see. And the best way to do that is print on demand. And the reason why this question of like, how do you know it when you're ready to print, and how do you take your art from art to product, and how do you know if it's going to sell, is so complicated, is because if we knew what was going to sell, we would be billionaires.
Yeah. It's always on our minds. What's going to sell this time? Every time we go to a convention,
Yeah.
It's always the biggest mystery, because we can never predict what's going to sell. I mean, you know, we've been fortunate enough to have a few hits that people consistently buy.
Yeah.
But certain things that don't sell in one convention do gangbusters in the next convention. It's so strange.
So if anyone ever tries to sell you this idea that they know exactly what sells and you need to do this in order to sell whatever it is, they're lying to you.
Right.
Because no one actually knows what sells. They would be the rulers of the world if they knew, if they were that clairvoyant. But the best you can do is to test and test and test, and to figure out what works for you. And so we've kind of figured out what works for us in a way, and we're getting better at it. So once you've put a lot of work on these print-on-demand sites, you're going to either hear crickets or you're going to get your first few sales. And you need to really analyze and be critical with yourself about what sells and what is selling and what is not selling. What isn't selling, after give it a little bit of time. I want to say something like a few weeks to a month. Especially if you're really promoting it and no one is buying it, then you need to eliminate it. And that's not a winning design. That's not a product that sells. And you need to put up more work of similar to the designs that do sell.
Right.
And that's basically how you replicate successes. It's you just test. You shoot in the dark until you find something that works. And then you ask yourself what about it works. And you take that idea and you do it again. And if that works, then it means, oh, you were right. If it doesn't, then it's back to the drawing board. And you just keep replicating your successes again and again until hopefully you have a few designs that consistently sell. Because that's what we did when we were at conventions.
Yeah, when we were at conventions, like I said, it was really hard to figure out what made a good print. And you started selling one, especially at Sabicon, our very first Sabicon, 2015. You started consistently selling this Hayao Miyazaki tribute.
It was like a compilation of a bunch of different characters that I really personally liked from the Miyazaki movies. And they were all gathered around a dinner table and having this real feast. And it was very heartwarming and nostalgic, and the aesthetic to it is very heartwarming.
Right.
Is the best way I can describe it. And I think that's what resonated with people a lot. And that was the first print I sold over 10 copies of.
Right. And I think for me, one of the biggest sellers that I had early on was, do you remember Level Up Expo in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
So one thing is timing. When something is blowing up, even though it's like a small little niche of people, maybe you want to make fan art for those people. So at that time, it was, I think, summer of 2016. I want to say, I might be wrong. Anyway, the Level Up Expo happened, and it's this video game convention in Las Vegas, Nevada. And before that convention, Overwatch first had its beta. And I have been paying attention to this game for a while. Before it even came out, I was trying to convince my friends and everybody that like, oh, this might be like, this might be the next big game. And, you know, I thought it was really neat. So I made like a Tracer and Diva print. And what was really interesting was when Level Up Expo happened, it was at the time where the beta had just ended. And what was really interesting, if you remember, everybody was kind of starved for Overwatch content. And, you know, you see tons of Overwatch fan art now, but at that time, people really wanted it. And there wasn't too much of it yet. So when we went to Level Up Expo, people that print really resonated with a lot of people. And that's how you know, like the lesson I learned there was, if there's a trend, no matter how, you know, niche it is, just, you know, maybe try it. I mean, take a look, you know, really understand why people like the thing. And maybe be invested in it yourself and make art for it and then see what happens. Because you never know. You know? So that's what I learned. So now let's get into how we sell smaller items.
We actually have examples of like buttons and the smaller things that we sell. Let me get them.
I'll hold it. Now, for the people who are listening only audio, I'm showing off a piece of foam core with all our buttons on it. So we made this little display to display our buttons, and it's basically foam core with felt glued on top so that we can pin our buttons onto them. And they are, I think, 2.5-inch buttons. They're really big buttons.
They're not available online because I haven't figured out a way to group all of them, because I don't think anyone would just buy one button online.
It would be cool to have them in a set.
As a pack, and we're phasing a lot of them out anyways. So. And we've had these 2.5-inch buttons of different things, obviously. It used to be of anime and different fan art throughout the years.
And then our own original stuff. Like for these, we did really cute animals like Siamese cats and corgis, and then paired them with food. So, you know, people really thought it was really cute. And they had maybe they had a corgi or a pug or something. Like, oh, that reminds me of my pet.
And we tried doing different types of cats with different patterning. So I've noticed a lot of people will buy their cat.
Or a friend's cat.
As gifts or whatever.
People like to buy stuff for their friends too. So think about what would make as a good gift for people.
So these are the buttons that we sold very early on. And they're great because they're a nice price point for everyone, really. They're so cheap. We sell one for $3 because they're so big. One is worth $3. Two for $5. And that usually convinces people to throw $5 at us.
For two buttons.
And so the nice thing about smaller items is it's much easier for everyone to support you. If they just want to support you, or if they really like it, it's change. It's someone's pocket change. A lot of times we've encountered young people who come up to us wanting a button, and they'll dig in their coin purse, and they're like, 10 years old maybe, and they'll like find change, and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry that I had to give you $3 in change. But money is money, and especially at the beginning, every dollar counts. So how would you say we go about designing buttons?
Well, when we first started making buttons, we would make buttons specifically for characters. So, for example, we did free buttons and the anime free buttons, Danganronpa buttons. I did Persona buttons, and we all kind of curated the button for the character.
Yeah.
But these days, when you want to be as efficient as possible, if you're making a print and you're selling it maybe at a decent medium size of 9x12, and you're selling it also at 11x17, a much more large version, maybe you could just take the head, like you just frame, where the button would be onto the print from the print, and then use that as a button too.
Yeah.
And that's what we started doing toward the latter half
Yeah.
of using our buttons when we did a lot of comic book fan art. Instead of curating the button, which in a perfect world we would just do that, but then just to save time and effort, we would just take from the print and turn that into a button.
And buttons are really, really cost efficient. For each button, I think it's less than $1 to make, especially if you have your own button maker. And one of my personal first investments was a button maker. Because even though I think it was, I forget, like $500 at the time or less, I think anywhere between $200 to $500. It easily paid for itself because
probably in one convention.
But,
and we used it for every single convention.
You buy the button parts in bulk and maybe like 500 at a time, and you'd be surprised how quickly that goes.
We've had a refill tons of times.
Yeah. And so you buy the button parts and you buy the button maker, and then there are creative ways to make it with like shiny or hollow effects as well.
So you would go to, I think, your nearest Michael's, or you'd look online for, it has like sort of like a holographic pattern on the front and adhesive in the back. And then you would basically, instead of using the clear plastic that seals the shell of the button, you would use that sticker stuff and then use that instead. Press the button, and then you'd have like a sticker that's holographic, with holographic shiny patterns. And it's neat.
Because they're so small, the hollow adhesive clear thing that you buy from Michael's is basically the same thickness as the Mylar, the plastic that you use for button making. So when you just put it on top of a print, you stick it on top, it acts as Mylar, which is really neat. And then you just get your artwork printed, or you print it yourself, and then you just cut it and make the button on the fly. We've seen people make buttons at conventions, like to order.
Yeah, well, it's our personal philosophy to try to just do all of that before the con, especially for us who likes to do commissions. We don't want to just like do a commission in the middle of it. Somebody orders a button, we make a button, and then the whole workflow is disrupted.
But I recommend it because I recommend buying a button maker because it's, when you're first starting out, it's really hard for when, like, you're not going to be good enough to sell a print, because we weren't. We didn't know how to make prints. We were beginners at it, and our prints just didn't sell very well at first. Until we got better at it. And when your prints aren't very good, the going price for prints, especially for your amateur artists, is around, especially for like 8.5 by 11 to 11 by 17 prints, they're anywhere between $10 to $20.
Right.
And like, think about what $10 and $20 is to you.
Especially if you're a high school student, if you're a young artist, that helps out.
Yeah, but like $10 to $20, you're not gonna give it to just anyone. It's lunch. It's dinner money.
Definitely.
So $3 for a button, $5 for 2 buttons. That's doable. So if you're like first starting out, that's why we recommend getting a button maker and and making smaller things like buttons or stickers. Stickers are really easy too.
Yeah, let's say it's your birthday next month. And, you could buy, a new Xbox or you could buy a button maker. That just makes more money.
Yeah.
So, if you have the chance to do that, well then, cool.
Yeah. And so the smaller items will help you make money faster than prints, because even though think about it, everyone has a print. Everyone can print something out of their printer with decent paper and make a print. But buttons are smaller and easier. Or even buy some sticker paper from Amazon, since we can't go outside, or from your local office supply store, and test out making stickers. And a lot of the times you can just hand cut it. That's what we did at the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah.
We did.
It was really bad on our hands, but
It made
it's
some money.
doable. Yeah. So these smaller things, another rule of thumb too, the smaller the thing, the more iconic and cuter usually it should be. It doesn't necessarily have to be cute, but it needs to be iconic. So it's not so good to try to make full illustrations on such a tiny thing. And anyways, cuter things on smaller things sell really, really well, in my opinion.
So something that we struggled with for a while was how to sell prints. It's something that took a few conventions to finally sort of get the hang of.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with trial and error. We didn't know what sold and what works for some people doesn't work for us. So I think the first thing to do is basically do as many designs as possible. Maybe you try to do 30 and you put them out there. But another thing there are some universal tips. Like one that I can think of is to keep it simple, almost pin-up-y. The fact that it's just like one character with a very dynamic or fun pose, and some ornamentation on the background, and then that's it. Because it's the quick read that you're looking after, especially with pin-up kind of prints.
Yeah, with prints are tricky.
Yeah.
You really, in order to figure out how to sell a print, you just need to do a lot of it. And like you said, you need to do like 30 and put them up for sale. Because most likely, one of the 30 might sell. What's even more likely that none of them will sell. And for us, we did a lot of prints before we could really figure out what sells. Even when I had my first hit and you had your first hit, it was very difficult for us to replicate it again. Yeah. We thought, oh, okay, maybe it's the fandom that we chose was just perfect or whatever.
Yeah. The thing about fandoms is they come and they go.
Yeah.
And then you have to jump on another fandom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we realized, okay, that wasn't it. So maybe it's the amount of characters that were in the print. And we tried doing bigger compilation prints and whatever. And that didn't necessarily work either, because then a print becomes more like a poster. And if you're not a poster designer, or it can become really messy and very lost in what the print is trying to convey. So one of the tips that I have is, other than making a lot of it,
sure,
is thinking about what you would like to have on your own wall. And if like you can't imagine having this artwork on your wall, and then it's not going to work as a print. So think about like what you think about when you design. Are you someone that likes design your living space? What you like the kind of artwork that you like to put on your wall. If you like really cute things and you like all pink things, are you just going to put a print that is really pastel in color scheme on your wall, or does it need to be more than just pastel? Does it need to be super cute? Right. Or if you're really edgy and you really like
high contrast stuff.
Yeah. Then are you going to put something that's like has bones in it,
right,
or it has that like has symbolism that is very to your aesthetic. So that goth, edgy aesthetic. So you really need to think about that. Who's your audience, and what kind of art do they put on their wall, and why would they put it on their wall? And if like your art doesn't fulfill any of that, then it's gonna be really hard for anyone to imagine your art on their walls.
Right. Yeah, and another tip that I could think of from the top of my head is if you really like a fandom or a niche, it's all the better to make art that you enjoy doing. Especially when we started doing conventions, we tried to jump on whatever fandom we could find, and when we actually did stuff that from stuff that we actually liked, like for me, I am a huge Persona fan, so I made a lot of Persona buttons, a lot of Persona prints, and I really enjoyed doing those because I really liked the property. So if you can, try to really enjoy this process, because very easily you could just kind of get delusioned and just feel like you're just trying to feed as many or service as many fandoms there are on the planet, but you really want to enjoy this too. Like this can be really, really fun and exciting if you allow it to be.
For me, the point of fan art is to train yourself.
Right.
Because like the reason why we say like you shouldn't rely on a fandom to sell your art is because at the end of the day, people are going to buy your art because it's your art, not because of the fandom, regardless of what other people might think. But everyone wants to eventually be able to sell their own original art one day.
Yeah, it's the end goal for everybody.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like legal gray area to selling fan art and doing fan art, but fan art will help you sell, and it's a great way to kind of figure out what makes you different, and it's you allowing yourself practice to figure out, okay, how would I do this version of this character? And it gives you kind of an easier starting point of how to design a print. And once you've really figured out, once you've nailed fan art prints, it'll be that much easier for you to do your own original art, because you've done a lot of the learning with kind of like a prompt.
Even though you're doing a property that's very now, doesn't mean you can't add flavor from the past. So one thing that you and I have tried to do, especially with our prints, is to mix different illustration eras, illustration styles, I guess you would say, from, let's say the 50s or 60s, that classic illustration era, golden age of illustration, where we looked at Norman Rockwell, we looked at J.C. Leyendecker, especially you did like a Overwatch piece that had a very Leyendecker type painting. Yeah. And it's like that kind of stuff that adds like a whole new flavor to whatever fandom or property that you're servicing. It's almost like people really want to see what you as an artist do to their favorite characters. And you can get inspired by things that have been done before. Like you can have a painting of your favorite character that looks like a Sargent painting or something. Or you can have like a compilation of your favorite characters, let's say in Haikyuu, your favorite anime or your favorite comic book team, and then kind of compose them in a very Drew Struzan type of movie poster thing, but with your own comic book style. You can get so much inspiration from, the history of illustration and art. And you can inject it into these new properties and like just mixing the old with the new, make something really new and fresh. I'd say.
Yeah, and not only do you take from the style or the way these old masters, I would call them, you also should take from the composition as well. Right. So you mentioned like the pinup style prints. I think that would be easily misconstrued with like actual pinups, like pinup girls. But pinup in print lingo basically just means a print of a character, of one character or maybe two. It doesn't necessarily need to be in a pinup B type pose or whatever, but there are certain rules when you're designing a pinup type print, because you're showcasing the character. You can't you can't choose a pose that covers up the entire costume or the design of the character.
Right. So if you were, going to do a foreshortened punching pose, which looks really cool and dynamic, but you're most likely going to cover the torso. The torso is going to be distorted and you won't be able to see the insignia of the character or the colors of the character properly. Yeah. And having the whole pinup idea is that it's clear and it's very quick read.
Yeah. And what that ultimately means, especially for us, we've made so many prints by now and we're still not masters at it by any means. But there are only so many poses that pinups allow for.
Right.
And it sucks, but if you're a pinup print artist, you kind of have to go from waist up and full, either the character standing facing you or maybe a 3/4 view. There's really not that much you can do other than really showcase the character and do it really, really well. I think that's why a lot of artists eventually get into less pin-up-y type prints and more compilation type prints. And there are ways to get creative about composing a print and composing essentially a piece of art that you would like to, because what are you going to do with it? Most people put it on their walls.
Right.
People frame it or whatever it is. So a lot of the times you are going to be drawing portraits. This might seem kind of random, but we have been reading this book, Save the Cat. Save the Cat. I'm showing the book to the camera if you are just listening to the audio version.
In the cover, there is a cat dangling
by a rope. And this is a screenwriting book, actually. And this book is about how to write screenplays that sell.
Yeah.
Which I think was pretty relevant to this whole podcast episode. And it really teaches you how to go about writing a screenplay. Not necessarily one that is going to fulfill all your artistic dreams or whatever.
It's primarily how to write a Hollywood script, basically.
Yeah, one that people will buy and it kind of gets into the psychology of sales.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, and I thought it was fascinating, and it's kind of written in my tone of voice.
Yeah, Janet and I have this weird activity where, let's say we're hanging out for breakfast and one of us reads aloud to another. Yeah. It's very strange, but I basically read this book to you out loud, and then you and I would laugh because it sounds like something you would write.
Yes. If you translated my Why I Quit My Job at Disney video into writing, I wrote a very concise script for that. So right. I know exactly, I can almost rehearse it to this day because I did it so often. And when I write, I tend to have a very sarcastic tone. Yeah. Very kind of snarky, a little bit cheeky. That's just how my humor comes across, I guess.
It's very on-brand Janet.
Yeah. And this book is actually, I actually hadn't read it till recently, and it's my exact tone of voice.
Yeah, it's like if you were to write a book, the tone would be basically this book, Save the Cat.
Yeah. And regardless of whether you want to be a Hollywood screenwriter or you want to sell scripts in Hollywood or whatever, I think this book is fascinating in how to tell stories, period. Yeah. Whether you want to write comics, whether you want to make a film, whether you're just even...
Maybe if you're making a webtoon or a comic book. Yeah, you're just making a narrative for yourself.
Yeah, or even in YouTube, YouTube land, there's a beginning, middle, and end to these YouTube videos, no matter how short. Even in something like a TikTok, where it's 10 seconds long.
15 seconds. That's 15 seconds, beginning, middle, end.
Yeah, figure out how to do it. And figure out how to grab people, how to really get their attention. And if you can figure out how to do that, you will be able to sell to them that much easier. Yeah. And if you want to listen to this book, because no one has time to read.
Right. Especially if you're drawing. I mean,
yeah.
you could be drawing and you could throw on this audiobook and then, that'd be great.
Yeah, we have the perfect solution for you. You can go to audibletrial.com/the Honey and Absinthe Podcast, where you can get a free trial of Audible and you will get a free audiobook. You can consider Save the Cat. And 2 free Audible originals, so 3 Audible audiobooks in total. And you also have access to daily news, especially important right now,
Yep.
and guided meditation, especially important right now. And they have thousands of titles you can choose from, and you can listen anytime, anywhere. It's perfect for people like us who draw a lot and who can't read.
We can read. You know what I mean. You know what she means.
And if you can't decide what you want to use your credit on, the credit lasts all year, even if you decide to cancel your trial. So audibletrial.com/the Honey and Absinthe Podcast.
So I think in a previous podcast, we talked about how we made our first shirts at this food festival, 626 Night Market, and it didn't go so well. And I briefly talked about how it took, I think, 2.5 years, or maybe more, to finally start doing apparel again.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're, maybe you have been selling prints and maybe you have been doing all this stuff, but you've been tinkering with the idea of maybe selling apparel. How do you know it's the time is right?
Yeah. Well, since we are taking into consideration these print-on-demand sites, honestly, selling a print versus selling a button versus selling a shirt is all kind of similar now.
Right.
Because we were doing it the traditional way of funding it ourselves and screen printing it, finding a screen print shop to do it for us. It's a lot more of an investment, and you really have to think hard about your design and when you are ready. But with print on demand, you can put your art on anything. So you can start testing the waters as right now if you wanted to by going to sites like Threadless. But there are certain rules that I would prefer people start with before they just slap their art on a t-shirt.
Right.
And the first rule is that don't just think you can draw something that was meant for a print and slap it on a t-shirt and think that people will buy it like that. Because you have to understand, there are people whose jobs are apparel designers. They are t-shirt designers, and that's all they do. So don't think that just because you're a capable artist that can make pretty artwork, it just belongs on a shirt, because you really have to design for the product that you are making.
Ideally, you want to design for the product as much as you can. We briefly talked about, we used to curate art for the buttons, and then in the interest of time, we basically took from the prints that we were making and turned them into buttons. Ideally, what you want to do is to compose for the apparel, whether it be a sweater or a shirt. You want to design the art for the thing instead of just taking what's already been done and slapping it on the clothing. Yeah.
So first and foremost, I would say if you want to design apparel, like anything else, you need to study the thing that you're trying to make. So if you've never really looked at t-shirt design, look at t-shirt design.
Get on Pinterest, make a board, look at what people have been doing and look at what has been done.
And a lot of times you will find that a lot of t-shirts have typography on it. And there's a very good reason for that, because especially with things like apparel compared to prints or buttons, it kind of applies to that as well, is when you wear something, it says something about you. And if there's a message on it or an image on it, you resonate with that image or that message, that type or whatever. And that is really important to why people buy clothing compared to prints. Like it's very different. Like a print, you might like the art. It might look good on your wall. You might just want to support the artist, whatever. But when you decide to put something on your body, that's very different.
Yeah, you're representing the thing.
Yeah.
I remember one of the first ideas for our first sweater line was to cater to a specific audience.
It was the alternative girl.
Right.
The girl who was not really represented in the Comic-Con crowd. Like when you go to Comic-Con, there are t-shirts for men.
So when we started tinkering with this idea, we looked around and we even went to some conventions as an attendee just to look around what kind of hoodies or apparel have been selling at the convention. And it would be a lot of there's a lot of puns.
Yeah.
If you go to a convention, you will see there's tons of really cute pun shirts with really cute characters. It's awesome. That's a whole market.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of video game punny stuff with punny illustrations. There's for whatever property from Dark Souls to Sonic or whatever it is. And then, very bro type t-shirts that you see all the time. But then never something that's truly female centric.
Yeah, the thing that really got to me as someone who I was looking for it because I wanted to buy it.
Right.
Not because I was looking for it to see if there was competition. I just wanted clothing for myself. And I found that all the things catered towards people like me were kind of too little girlish. Like it was too pink and frou-frou and all that stuff. And that's not really what an adult woman wants. I have no problem with pink, but I don't want pink and ponies and sparkles and that kind of stuff.
I mean, if you're into that, you're into that.
Yeah.
But, there are a lot of people like you too.
Yeah. There was no in between of just something that was more good for both female and male. It was just either very male or very, very female. It was just nothing in the in-between, more gender neutral. And I was just, seeing that, I just saw a hole in the market, and I felt I can make t-shirts, I can make sweaters like that. And so that was the idea of our first sweater collection.
Yeah. And it has evolved to so many things, but it's great.
But I want to show an example of one of our more recent designs.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the fight shirt. So what's interesting about this series was we wanted to do, after the line that we were talking about, we wanted to do a line for summer, or spring, summer, where it was more workout centric, more of hashtag goals and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do a line with ladies working out and, conjuring their spirit animal, basically.
Yeah, and that example is the perfect example of the artwork aligning with the typography and making a message that people really really resonated with. And that shirt is still one of our best sellers, and it's in my opinion, a good example of a design that we've made that have worked out for us.
Yeah. Super proud of that. And while we're showing, we should show one of our large prints that we have. So now Janet's taking this print from the stack of stuff that we have.
Here.
And here is the print. This is an 11 by 17 print of who we call the Green Lady.
The Frog Witch.
Yeah. This lady has 2 million views on TikTok.
Yeah.
People who follow us on TikTok will know which one we're talking about.
Yeah, and I have a smaller print.
That is about 8.5 by 11?
Yeah.
Ish. And yeah.
Yeah, so those are, in a way, I would call these pinup type prints because it's showcasing a character. And those are examples of our original prints that we have done recently.
If you've done buttons, if you've done prints, and if you've done apparel, what else can you do?
What we kind of touched on without saying was different price points. We have smaller items, which can vary between a few dollars, $1, up to like maybe $5. It's pocket change, essentially.
Right.
And then to prints, they're a little bit more expensive, anywhere between $10 to $20 and up. And then we have our apparel, which anywhere
$30 to $50.
$30 to $50, and that's definitely more pricey, which is exactly why you need to be very considerate about the type of art you put on clothing, because people really will think a little harder about buying your clothes.
Yeah, like you said, for example, that they want to buy the illustration with the shirt on it, the shirt with the illustration on it because it represents something.
Yeah.
They really have to see themselves as wearing that thing, or else they're just gonna say no to it.
Yeah.
If they can't imagine themselves wearing it, they're not gonna buy it.
Yeah. That kind of shows a low price point, a medium price point, a high ticket price point, $30 to $50. And now we're gonna go into commissions.
Yeah.
Which is basically custom artwork. And that is like a luxury price point, I would call it. It's not literally luxury price point, but it's luxury for us. And commissions, they vary between like digital commissions to like traditional ink commissions, which we provide, and like other kinds of custom artwork. Let me show you an example.
Sure.
So I brought up this Black Cat commission that we did. Vincent is holding it right now. And it's an ink commission that we did on 9x12 paper.
Yep, mixed media paper.
Yeah, and it's basically an original piece of art that I did. It's currently priced at $80. But for commissions, they are expensive because they are original pieces of art, and we are making it custom for you. And the important part about having something like this is it makes your art really special. And it really, you can make a print out of it after, but only one person in the entire world will have the original.
I think the reason why our tables at conventions do pretty well is that, even though we have buttons, prints, and apparel, all of that is basically an advertisement for what our art will look like. Yeah. And the reason why commissions do so well for us is that, even if they don't want any of the stuff that we have, they enjoy our style and they want to commission their favorite character, or a lot of times their family members, or a couple commission, because they like our style, which is pretty incredible, because, all of this work kind of does double time to help people understand, what they're getting.
Yeah. When you start being able to sell commissions, especially custom artwork like this, you start becoming, I think, a more sought-after artist. You become, especially at a convention, let's say we're at a convention, even though this is not the case, we're at home selling our art online because of quarantine or whatever, but at a convention, if you can get by selling prints and buttons and apparel, you might be able to just get by. Like, you might be able to make your table back and maybe pay for next year's convention, or have a little bit of extra pocket change. But that's not the ideal situation. You want to be making a profit. So when you start being able to offer these bigger ticket items, it makes it much easier to start making a profit. And that's how actually we've been able to go from like really struggling at making our table back to making a really decent profit. Like, when I say we make $2,000 of profit at a convention, it means that it's profit. It doesn't, like, I've factored in all our expenses already. So like, we've paid for our table. We've most likely paid for the table next year. On top of that, we've made $2,000 of profit. Right. So you can easily calculate we've made much more than $2,000 at a convention. Yeah,
it sucks that when we go into a convention, we have to pay for the convention, we have to pay for being there, and we also have to pay for the cost of next year's, which it's the thing that we prioritize the most.
Yeah.
When we are thinking about breaking even, especially.
Yeah. When you're able to offer a big ticket item like an original piece of art or a custom piece of art, you will be able to stop worrying about making back your bare minimum expenses, which is technically what buttons should be helping you do. Even like every dollar counts. Literally every dollar counts. If you sell a lot of buttons, you'd be able to pay for a lot of things. But commissions will help send you over that extra bump to get you to that place of like, oh, you are a sought after artist.
So what do you say about pricing your commissions?
You need to make a lot of samples of whatever type of commission you're thinking about offering. We've offered actually a bunch of different kinds. We've offered digital.
We stopped doing that very quickly.
Yeah.
At 626 Night Market, the food festival we did digital convention commissions live for people.
Yeah.
We even used a TV that people can watch us do our commissions as we're drawing it, and it was a little too much.
Yeah, the problem with digital commissions is that it's hard to know when to stop, and which means actually digital commissions are harder to do than traditional commissions if you are proficient at both.
Yeah, so imagine everybody that you are at a convention with us and we only had a sheet of mixed medium paper, Prismacolor pencil to rough in our sketch, and a brush to ink our sketch. I mean, look at how many hoops we're jumping over somebody who just has to make a digital commission, and then they're picking out colors. They could detail it to no end.
Yeah.
But for us, we're giving ourselves limitations with the medium that we're using. And just by doing that, we can make some really banger artwork that people are really thrilled to purchase.
Yeah, and ironically, digital commissions tend to be cheaper than traditional commissions because you don't get a physical product at the end.
You don't get to frame something original with the artist's brush strokes or pen strokes. It's just basically a print.
Yeah, and
for digital.
It's even what you're paying for at the end of the day with the digital commission is the customness of it, that you requested something and the artist did it. But so it was easier for us to do traditional commissions, and it paid us more, so why not?
We stuck to that.
And so first of all, make samples, make a lot of samples, and sell them first as products before you can have commissions open, but sell the samples first and see what do people buy from you. So I figured out really early on, I already knew this intuitively, that I am very good at drawing women. And I like drawing women. And that's the kind of work that people buy from me. Very rarely does someone commission me to draw a man or a monster or a creature design or whatever. People know from looking at my work that, oh, this girl is very good at drawing girls. So you might be at a stage in your artistic journey where you don't really know yet what you like to do or what you're good at or what people want from you. So if you make just a lot of commission samples, one, it's practice for you. Two, people will, when you do sell your first original piece of art, and you start making sales like one after the other, you're going to start to understand like what do people want from you. So when you do start to open your commissions up to everyone, you kind of know the demand.
Right.
And that goes back to your question of how much should you charge. If you start selling commissions, let's say you price them really high and no one's buying them. Try pricing it lower. Maybe $5 lower or whatever, $10 lower. And if people still don't buy it, keep pricing them lower and lower and lower. And what sucks is, especially if you're a beginner artist, you're probably going to get sales when you're charging next to nothing.
Yeah. And we did commissions that were about 8.5 by 11. We sold them for $20 when we first started out.
Yeah.
You know?
And looking back, they were worth $20
Right.
because we just weren't good enough yet. And when you start getting swamped is when you realize there's a demand for your art now. And that's when you can start raising prices a little bit. And obviously, you're going to start losing some customers because they might stop being able to afford you, or whatever reason, they don't want to pay that much for your art. But you will get new customers who are willing to pay that much for your art. And over time, you will be able to charge more and more and more. And that's just how it is. Very rarely do you get an artist who is able to charge hundreds of dollars right out the gate for an original piece of art. Like, no one starts off that way.
Yeah, and the way we still kind of think about raising our prices is when we started out, it was very low, but every year we would raise them higher and higher. Mm-hmm. When we got hired, we raised them even higher. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just, a lot of the times too is when you and I really like the drawing, we'll price it really high simply because we like having that drawing around.
Yeah.
And if we're going to part with it, you'd have to pay for it.
Yeah. I remember.
So it could be personal preference too if you want.
Yeah. I remember in downtime during a convention, we don't want to just be twiddling our thumbs looking bored or sad that we're not making sales constantly. So we would add more products to our table by making commissions. And we have these little easels that we can easily prop up our artwork right in front of us, right dead center. And I remember drawing this illustration of Wonder Woman that I really, really was like, wow, I outdid myself with the skills that I have currently. And so I asked you how much I should price it for. I think at that time we were charging $60 for an original or something like that. And then you're like, I don't know, you really like it, so if you want to keep it, you should probably price it really high.
Yeah.
So I think I priced it at $100. Yeah. And I put it up on the easel, and an hour later, some guy came by who also really, really liked it and paid $100.
Yeah.
And so that goes to show if you really feel strongly about something, try pricing it how much you think it's worth.
Yeah, definitely the people who are paying attention to what we're doing on TikTok, when we start putting those pieces online, there will definitely be some that we're going to price high simply because we like it. You're going to have to fight us for it.
Yeah.
Briefly, let's talk about books.
Okay.
Because that's something else you could make and give people.
So we've sold a good number of different types of books throughout our 6 years. Yeah. We started with zines. So my very first book was, I think, a sketch zine.
Yeah, so was mine.
Yeah, it was
mine was a Inktober compilation. I did a kind of a horror compilation, Inktober. I call it 31 Days of Ink Horror. And then I printed it and stapled it and sliced and diced it myself.
Yeah, we made it ourselves.
Yeah.
My sketchbook zine and your Inktober zine. And that's how I recommend people do it. Because you can literally, if you have a printer at home and a stapler, you can make your own booklet and you can sell it for dirt cheap. And the reason why I would recommend doing it that way first is because, sad to say, very few people actually buy physical books anymore. When people do buy a book, they think really long and hard if they have shelf space for it, if they need it in their life, even if they're even going to read it.
I mean, just think about the sheer volume of artists who come out with a sketchbook book, and how many of them there have been since the 2010s, and how many you let kind of gather dust simply because you've just collected a lot of them. So it has to be kind of worth the investment. Yeah.
So if you make your own zine, you can sell it for $2, $5, less than $7. That's really easy because books are so notoriously hard to sell, you can, because you are DIYing it, you can make it on the fly, kind of. You can make like 2 or 3 or 5.
Right.
And you don't need to be making like 10 books. You don't need to be making 20 books. So even if you wanted to, you could even bind your own booklet. There are YouTube videos on bookbinding, and if you get all the tools, which is basically very simple tools like fabric or sewing needles and glue, you can make your own book. You can literally bind it yourself. It's really not that hard. It's something I learned in school, actually. How many books do you even need to make? It's not, even though it's a little bit time consuming to make, you can make 3, 4 or 5 and sell them. And see if anyone wants them.
The content of the book matters a lot too. Like I said, there's a lot of sketchbook compilation books out there. And what consumers are really doing is supporting the artist and supporting that style. They're probably really inspired by the way you draw, and they want to invest in your sketchbook. Another thing to think about too is like the content. Maybe instead of a sketchbook, you could do a comic.
Yeah.
And if you do a comic or like a little strip, then you have to go into like, oh, what does the best?
Yeah.
And there are trends out there, right?
Yeah. So for us, we started with our like little sketch zines, and we upgraded to our little comic strip zine, and that I still think that little booklet zine has sold the best out of all the books we've ever made over time, because it was funny, it was slice of life, and it was relatable. I find that, it's harder and harder to sell comic zines these days that are more serious and have characters that you need to get invested in and stuff like that. But if you have something like a comic strip, like a funnies type thing,
and if you're really good at telling a joke, especially with your drawings, people want to see that.
Yeah.
I've noticed.
But from there, we graduated a little bit to making more of like a curated art book, which I can show.
So this is our book Muse. Janet's holding it up to the camera right now. And it's a compilation of our Inktober sketches from 2017.
Yeah.
Inktober 2017. And this is basically when you and I used to sell our art separately. You used to sell as Janet Chan. I used to sell as Vincent. We joined forces and basically became Honey and Absinthe.
Yeah.
And that's our book, sort of commemorating that day. And we basically split Inktober in half. And we kind of just did your share. I did my share. You did your share. It's pretty crazy.
And so this book, it's glue-bound book that we got printed at a local print shop. And so if you want to get a book done like this, there are plenty of sites. I'm sure you can just Google it, where you can do it online instead. Making a book like this is a lot more involved because of the actual manufacturing of the book will make it more expensive. I think we got it printed at a place called Edition One, and I think we got like 100 books printed, and each book costed, I think, $10 or something like that. But with books like these, the cost of manufacturing is pretty high, which is why we suggest starting with zines first to figure out what sells. And even then, to be able to sell something like 100 copies of a book is really, really hard.
It is,
which is why we recommend you start by doing it yourself first to see exactly how many copies of anything. This applies to all, like buttons, prints, whatever. You need to figure out exactly what's doable for how much quantity you actually need. So with buttons, we only make like 3 buttons of each design at a time until we figure out, oh, this design is really popular, and then we can go ham and make like a ton, like 10 or more at a time. With prints, same kind of deal. We make like 3 copies of a print at a time. There are certain prints that we know are going to do well just by experience without ever having to test it, and we just make like 10 copies at a time. If you have a winner, you could probably order like 100 copies of a print and just have it ready all year round. You don't have to pay for every 10 copies or whatever.
But a good rule of thumb is to at least underprint, especially when you're testing the waters for a new item that you have.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we've made a print and there's a convention coming up, let's say like there's a convention coming up in 2 weeks and we're making prints, we're going through the process of printing, we'd only print 3 for something that's new and something that we're unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
And like, you know, if it's sold quickly, then we know it's a winner. And sometimes it has on a Friday and we had to print it at a Kinko's, which like is a bummer because you just never know these things. If we knew in hindsight, we would have printed more.
Yeah.
But a good rule of thumb is to like at least print like a small stack because we've had those instances where we thought we were banking, like people are going to buy this. They're really going to buy this. We print like 20 and only like 5 of them are sold. And it takes a while for them to all be sold. Yeah. And it's all about, and this all goes to trying to save money too.
I recommend printing less than 10.
Yeah, save money.
Yeah, for your first book. And because of that, there's no print shop that I think will agree to make you 10 books. Right. So you either got to do it yourself or you make a zine. Like lower your standards, it'll lower your costs, and it'll be better in the long run because it'll help you learn.
There are a lot of creative ways to make a DIY zine really cool. Yeah. You just have to, look it up and figure it out. Yeah. This takes a while for a lot of people. We have friends in conventioning who do what we do. We work all day and we do conventions all night. They'll tell you too, like it really is a journey, and it really is a sort of gut check with yourself all the time in every convention of like what can sell. And if you're starting out right now, just know that if it's not working out for the first month or 2, just don't give up. There are people who just kind of get really discouraged after their first convention, or maybe after the first 2 or 3 months of selling stuff. Like this whole thing is patience and being truthful with yourself as to and critical with yourself as to what can sell, what's working, and to really be honest with what's not working.
I think the key is to not give up too soon, because like I said, that one guy with the threadless shirts, if he had given up by design 50 or whatever, he would have never gotten to the design that made thousands and thousands of dollars. So it takes a lot of learning, looking at how we were able to sell online and in person. Selling online is going to be really hard. It's much harder than selling in person, like 1,000 times harder. By the time we started selling online, we were working professionals. I had, I think, DreamWorks and Disney in my resume already, and it was still really difficult for me to sell online. It's not an easy thing, but you have lots of time, and you really need to keep trying at it, because it will pay off in the end. Because that feeling you get when you get your first sale, especially your first online sale, is really, like, I don't even have words for it.
It's really exciting.
It's really, exciting. Really exciting. It's validating in a lot of ways. And I want everyone to experience that. And I want everyone to experience that again and again and again, not just like once.
Yeah, and one thing that will ensure that is if you're advertising yourself properly. If you it's perfectly okay to try to use one platform to the best of its ability to, show off your work. I mean, there are tons of people who use just Instagram alone, but if you're able to use YouTube as well as Instagram, as well as TikTok, any kind of platform you can to put your work out there, it's all the better for you, because the way these apps work these days, they're actively trying not to show your post to everybody, because that is reserved for sponsorships and sponsored posts. So the best way to fight that is to just post everywhere frequently. So if you want to ensure your success, or at the very least ensure that people see your work, do your best to post on every platform. If you can only do one, well, then do a lot of research as to what you can do to maximize or optimize that app for your advertising. One of the best things to do, if you especially have the time, you have the time, post as many places as possible.
Especially in our current times right now.
Yeah.
Art is honestly the best distraction.
Right.
When things are hard, I love drawing. We've been working professionals long enough to, in a way, forget what it's like to do art for yourself.
Right.
A lot of times we think about art as like a thing for a client or a thing to make other people happy, not to make ourselves happy. So the way we go about making art is very different nowadays compared to when we were younger. But recently, after I had left my job, my career in animation to do this, I started feeling that again. When things are hard, when I'm struggling emotionally or whatever, I would go and make commission pieces or make samples or whatever. And it really calmed me. And at the end of the day, I will be able to make money from it too. So, when you need a distraction right now, best to maybe put some of your energy into making something that people might want to buy.
Yeah. And if you're on the fence about it and you're waiting to see how well other people do before you do it, don't do that. If you're on the fence about it, do it. Try it. Do it now, because I guarantee you there's going to be a whole wave of artists trying to make money now online because things are tough and you just want to be able to support yourself or your family as best as possible.
Yeah.
So expect a lot of people posting commission prices and really trying to figure out how selling their work online is going to work. So if you're on the fence about it, don't hesitate. Take action quickly, because truly this is the best time because you have a lot of time. The other problem is everybody else has a lot of time too.
Yeah.
Because we're all stuck at home together.
Yeah, and nothing is worse than standing still. If you're just standing still, you have no momentum, you won't be able to get over the fear of posting online. I remember what it's like to be a very introverted, shy teenager. I can't imagine, I would have never imagined that like 27-year-old me would be showing her face on the internet. But, I understand the fear around it, but you gotta do what you gotta do to put your name out there, to put your art out there. And if you're not gonna do it, someone else is gonna.
Yeah, and also it's a really good distraction. There's a lot of things you could get in your head really easily in these times, and you and I especially have been taking walks in the morning, like nice brisk walks where we give people space and we don't touch anything.
Yeah.
But it's good to help your mind listen to the trees and the birds. So if you're thinking about diving into this whole thing, understand that it's a really good distraction to keep yourself busy and to have a goal and to work on something and to have a project around this time, because it's good to focus the mind. Something to keep you from going crazy, I guess.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to turn into Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
From The Shining, that's right. Yeah, don't stay at home for too long. At least get out in your backyard and get some sun,
Yeah.
Yeah, but all that to say is if you love to draw, then really lean into the fact that it can be a very therapeutic activity. If you just, a lot of people, I think there's too much emphasis on making the perfect, great drawing and not enough emphasis on just enjoying yourself while you draw, because it's really, I don't know. As someone who really enjoys mark making, I really enjoy the sound of the pencil as my palm cruises through the bond paper. I really get romantic and I love that stuff. And I think people, especially these times where we're kind of just locked in, kind of fall back in love with the idea of just making marks, making really ugly, goofy drawings and really, really try hard drawings, but just whatever it is, whatever spectrum it is, just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
You have all the time and it's good for you at the end of the day too.
Yeah. Finished, not perfect. I think a lot of us get really self-conscious. Like I always say this thing about, I think it's really ridiculous that people tell artists to, temper their egos or their confidence or whatever, because artists don't have that. Let me say that again. Artists don't have egos. Most of them don't. Some of them do, and that's very rare. And what I think manifests as what other people think is ego is actually insecurity, masked as ego. And I think a lot of people who are really insecure about themselves try to overcompensate for, and they try to act all big and tough when really they're probably the most insecure
one in the bunch.
Yeah. Truthfully, artists tend to be really introverted, shy people who are very insecure, always very self-critical. Like,
it's the sort that the insecurity comes from the fact that we're very critical about ourselves. I think the best artists are very self-critical because in order to improve, you need to be critical.
Yeah.
So that can manifest itself in all sorts of ways. Yeah. As you're saying.
But something that we've learned from being working professionals and coming out of the art school that we came out of is that, at the end of the day, you can't be judging yourself constantly like that. Yeah. Because you being an artist and being introverted and being that critical of yourself is going to get into the way eventually.
Yeah. You guys don't understand how many times we drew something and we thought it was great, and then a couple of days later we look at it and we're like, oh, I could do better than it already. Yeah. And that is what should be happening. I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of emphasis on where you are at right now in your art journey and the fact that you can't paint this well, or you can't draw a head or a hand that well. If you're drawing constantly, you're going to be better than you were a month ago, hopefully. So what does it matter? Yeah. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. The fact is, you should just be making all the time. Yeah. And like, if you look back and you are really like, ooh, I don't like what I did there. No big deal. No big deal. Yeah. Because the fact that you address that means that you're a better artist.
Yeah. And you cannot let that feeling of, I will sell work when I'm good enough, prevent you from trying to sell your work
now.
Yeah. Like, for example, I sold, in a different podcast, I think a few episodes ago, I talked about how we both talked about how we sold our art very early on to our classmates. Yeah. I sold it for fake money in third grade, and you sold your original Yu-Gi-Oh
cards that I would paint on top of and sell to people as novelty items.
And if we didn't have that initial experience, we wouldn't have the kind of gusto to go and do that at a much older age. But even so, like in high school, I was able to earn quite a bit of money by entering contests with my art. And in a way, that taught me like commission work. That taught me client work in a very early on, even though I didn't see it that way. At any age, I think, at any skill level, you should be able to sell work, whether it's to your family and friends or whatever.
Yeah. We wish you the best. I mean, it's going to be a long journey. Some of you hopefully get really lucky and, you strike gold really quick. Let's say you have a sticker or a print or a button that sells really well. But some people, probably the vast majority of people, will have to just take their time. Yeah. But the point is that you start now, because the sooner you start, the more you get to learn. Because like we said, there is no formula and there is no way to predict what sells. You just have to keep making stuff.
Yeah. But if we got in our own way, like 6 years ago, thinking that I'll
wait until we do it, until my art is this level or whatever.
I look at some of my art a week ago, like literally a week ago. I'm like, I can do better. But
so you've been drawing, like at this point, you've drawn maybe 15 My Hero Academia characters. And I mean, I thought your first one was pretty good, but then the ones that you're doing currently are really good. Your lines are steady, they're not wobbly. There's a lot of control. It's very precise. But it's still very loose. Like your inking has been really good, and it's only been like your 15th one. Yeah. So imagine if you do your 30th, 40th, 50th.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like the better you are, or the more you found your voice, like there's a lot of emphasis on who's better or whatever it is. I am truly most concerned with like who has an original voice and who's willing to, showcase their stuff to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
So if you stick to that, if you are, trying to improve, but you're also trying to find your own way of doing a style or a character or your own appeal, I think that's just all the better for you at the end of the day. So just keep at it.
Keep at it. Don't let negative self-talk get in the way.
So yeah, that's the end of our podcast. Follow us at TikTok and Instagram at Honey and Absinthe.
Yeah, and if you want to buy our merch, we showcased a lot of it in this episode. Go to honeyandabsinthe.com and please listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify, Google Podcasts.
And if you made it all the way up to this point, please do us a huge favor and drop a like.
Yeah.
And jingle our bells and buttons if you haven't already,
Yeah.
which are there. Subscribe,
Leave
bell.
a comment about what topics you want to hear from us, especially after this mysterious illness that we cannot say what it is.
Yeah.
Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us out.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye.